I'm R.W. King, and I'd like to tell all our listeners of the Double I Show about a couple new friends of ours. Lewis and Blake operate the Los Angeles Distillery over in Culver City, guys. You got to take a look over there. These guys are great. They help the community. You can visit their website, ladistillery.com. You can schedule tours, tastings, and they have a store right in front of their distillery. Los Angeles Distillery is the largest craft distillery in the country, located in our beautiful Los Angeles suburb of Culver City. They're the makers of fine bourbon, rye, single malt whiskeys. They also make rum and gin. Luxury items, guys, top notch. Trust me, I've tried it. You know me, guys. I always talk on the show about Johnny Walker. I switch, guys. This is my new whiskey of choice. How can you go wrong, guys, when LA Distillery's motto is, we firmly believe that extraordinary success requires extraordinary quality. You guys got to check them out. ladistillery.com. Tell them the Double I Show sent you.
From California.
Check it in from the left coast where we take sound that combines sunshine with rhyme, move 'em around. Take it slow, watch the smoke we blow. Bring California swing and this thing for show. Well, hey there, baby doll, dance the go-go. Off a little mentally, I see it in slow-mo. Hollywood, the east side, Hub City, and Frisco. Flyers to the flyers, fires up in the disco. Whoa, whoa, oh, now here we go. Mira, delincuentes, bum rush the show.
Welcome to the Double I Show. I'm Sweet Tea, and with me, as always,
R.W. King.
What the hell is up, King? Where the hell have you and I been?
That's what I'm talking about. Fuck, I feel like I'm shot out of a cannon, bro. We got to get fucking going. I'm fucking cracking right now.
Are
so
you
I'm talking
pumped?
about living the dream, bro. Living the dream, bro.
Nice. I love it.
I just want to say hello and thank you to everybody out there, all our listeners, all the people that always care, the people that keep supporting us. You know, we take time off, guys. We got lives. Sometimes things happen. You know, so we appreciate that you guys know that, hey, you know, we're doing this for you guys the best we can. You know, so, you know, we appreciate the feedback. You know, we appreciate the support. And guys, we're here doing it for you. We just want to say thanks to everybody, all our listeners across the world, across the country. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, King. And, you know, this doesn't get said very often, but I actually really enjoy the hate mail that we get, too. That's a lot of fun. You know, people.
Well, yeah, I sort of didn't want to say anything about that, but you know, when we take time off, there's those guys that always chime in and say, "Hey, man, where the fuck you at?"
Right.
You know, kind of shit. So yeah, it's like, okay, man. Well, you know, hey, guys, you know, sometimes things happen in our lives, but we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely, and you know, you got to appreciate that. It comes from a good place, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to say thank you to not just our listeners, like you said, but I'll also, as we always say, thank you to our essential workers, our sacrificial lambs out there, you being one of them, King. And, you know, we can't thank you enough. The unsung heroes of this country kind of keeping us going through all this. We really appreciate you and we really thank you and love you over here at the Double I Show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, King, with that said, this is going to be a special edition, so we really need to hit it hard. We need to get into this. This is going to be a full episode. So this thing is going to take up this big story. It's going to take everything up. So I'd really like for us to just kind of jump into it, if you don't mind.
No worries, man. Let's just go ahead and get into it.
All right, let's go.
So I'm going to go ahead and frame this thing up a little bit, right? And there's this guy, Greg Kelley. And this guy was a stud football player. I mean, as a sophomore, he was playing Texas 5A football team. That's the highest level of high school football there is in the country. That's, you know, as high as there is. That's the 5A out here in California. Same thing. Mm-hmm. The highest level. These kids are ready to go, and most of them do go and play Division I football. I mean, there is Division I talent on the field when these guys play. This guy, Greg Kelley, was head and shoulders the best player on his team at Leander High School in Texas. You know, historical program, probably won a championship or two. But, you know, in Texas, the biggest community event there is high school football. And the communities basically swarm to these events. So this guy was like a god in this city and the surroundings of this high school. And he started playing varsity football his sophomore year. And he was the best player on the team in sophomore year. So he tore it up his junior year, and he started getting offers from colleges. I mean, he was that good. And he said, you know what? I'm not even going to chance it. I'm going to go ahead and sign now in case something happens, an injury. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, we'll take that risk. So he signed with UTSA, Texas San Antonio, his junior year, at the end of his junior year. So this guy was on his way. All he had to do was have a good senior year. But then, like, hey, like we just talked about, right? I mean, certain things happen in your life. And his mom fell ill. She had a brain tumor. His dad had a pretty debilitating stroke and had to live in assisted living. So they were both in care facilities. He couldn't live by himself. He was going to have to go live with the relatives. And that would have taken him out of the district. He wouldn't have been able to play his senior year at that high school. So there was a booster. Her name was Sharma. Her son, John, played with Greg on the football team. Wasn't that good. But they were friends, really good friends. And, you know, he used to hang out at his house. That was sort of the hangout of the place. And during this time, you know, he got to meet the mom and knew the mom really well. Well, she offered her home to him, to Greg Kelley, and said, I'll take care of him his senior year. And he moved in there so that he wouldn't have to leave the district and he could play football. And again, this guy he was all-American kid. He was just doing the right things, it seemed like, on the outside. He had a, you know, high school sweetheart girlfriend, working out, doing these things. And next thing you know, man, he's working out one day in the summer between his junior and senior year and gets out, and there's a phone call from his brother just blowing him up. Knows something's wrong. He calls him back, say, hey, don't go to Sharma's house. Why not? Well, the police are looking for you. Why? What happened? One of the kids at the daycare, this lady Sharma ran a daycare out of her home, is accusing you of doing something to them. And he's like, no way, man. So he went over there and confronted it. And basically what it was is one of a very small child, 4-year-old child, I believe, accused him of having sex with him. And it was a strong enough allegation that they issued an arrest warrant for him based on that child's accusation and nothing else. And basically within 2 weeks of an investigation from when it was first reported to when they spoke to Greg Kelley, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and they arrested him, and he got arrested for what they termed super aggravated assault of a minor, sexual assault of a minor, because the child was under 6 years old. And this was like heavy duty. This was going to be forever on his life if he got convicted. So his high school sweetheart, Gabri, whatever her name is, it's, you know, the love of his life. You know, I can't pronounce her name, and I apologize. I didn't mean to say whatever her name was. I just can't say it, Dee. But, you know, her parents helped bail him out because they believed in him. And they knew he wasn't that kind of kid. And he kept swearing to his innocence, and he didn't do anything that he was accused of. And basically at that point, after he got bailed out, he basically had to wait for the trial to start. And his life was basically in the hands of a court, and he felt they were going to do him right. And that's sort of when everything went a little crazy for him.
Yeah, King, it was kind of crazy. The whole, I don't know, just the accusation and how your life can get turned upside down from one moment to another, and you don't even know what the hell's going on. It kind of seemed, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, or tell me what you think, but it kind of seemed to me like he was just a little, obviously he's young, you know, having a hard time trying to process all of this during that time. But when you're accused of something like that, it just kind of seemed like he couldn't fathom it. Like he didn't understand the severity in the beginning, right? It wasn't hitting him, just exactly how real it was. Right. I mean,
I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think the comment you made was, look how fast his life got turned upside down, and he basically didn't know what hit him. His head's spinning at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he's so young.
He's
17.
a kid.
He's a kid.
Yeah, he's a kid.
You know, so, I mean, at that age, how can you process that? You know, yeah, you got older people around you that understand that. But at 17, I don't care how mature you are. How do you process that?
You can't, right? I mean, right, let's be honest. When I'm thinking when I was 17 and something like this happened, you can't process all the things and the consequences and balance all the right things. I mean, it's just impossible. You don't have the knowledge, right? You're relying on other people to help you.
Right. And think about this too, right? So when you're that young, you're very naive. And so you think because you're taught as a child growing up by your parents, if you tell the truth, you're going to be okay, right? All you got to do is tell the truth. And so I'm pretty sure in his head was like, okay, this is going to go away. Don't worry about it. It'll go away because I'm going to tell you guys what I know or what I did or what I didn't do. Right. So I'm sure that that plays a big factor in his processing of this. It's like, okay, no big deal. It'll go away. Right. You hear that all the time when you have victims that they falsely admit under investigation that they did something after hours of saying they didn't. They finally admit to it because they think if they do admit to it, that they're just going to be able to go home because they can't process it. And it's usually younger people, like kids or teenagers that do that because they think, okay, if I give them what they want, I'll go home. So I'm pretty sure that that was kind of going through his head was like, look, if I just, you know, if I just attack this head first, it'll go away and I can just, move on. Right. I mean, you
But
got it.
right, I mean, even like you said, right, he's not comprehending all the consequences, everything else, but he's thinking in his head, hey, man, I'm innocent.
Yeah.
So I'm telling the truth. It's going to come out. I'm okay. Because he believes in these things still. He's naive. He's young enough.
Exactly.
Right. So remember, T, this took place in a place called Williamson County. And remember, this whole thing started, T, because I started watching a documentary on Showtime. Right. And I turned you on to it. And sorry about that, dude. I know. But you know what? Hey, go fuck yourself, bro. Because you know how many you've done to me like that? After you get done watching it at 10:30 or 11, you tell it to me and I click it on and I can't stop watching until 4 in the morning.
Okay.
So you know what, dude? Yeah. You know what?
So
hey.
It's your turn to be a dick. I get it. But you made me fucking binge it because I got hooked on it just like you did.
Right. But it was because of it was so, I don't know, man. It like hit home with me with this guy a little bit and how it was so easy to think this could have been anybody.
It could have been
anybody.
It could have been you or I. It could have been anybody. We know. It could be anybody.
And this guy just stood strong in his belief, and he had his faith, dude. It seemed to me, he was a good kid. He probably, probably went to church. He was with his girl. It seemed like they were pretty. They were good. They were good and wholesome living kids, doing the right thing. They were the popular kids in school.
Well, she was
having the best time of their lives, dude. That was the best time of their lives.
Absolutely. She was the head cheerleader. He was the most popular football player on the team. I mean, seriously, life was good for him other than his personal family life, right? His parents.
His mom got sick. She had a brain tumor or a brain issue. She had to be, in a facility. His father, I believe, had like a debilitating stroke.
Right.
And that sort of messed him up a little bit too between his junior and senior year.
Right.
And that's how he got hooked up with that lady Sharma. That's why he was living there. Because she offered to take him in his senior year so he could play football for the team.
I believe she went to his mother too and said, let me do this. This is how I get my rewards for heaven.
Correct.
She was saying that's how she's going to get rewarded in heaven by doing this for her.
But then remember, man, and that was a sad thing to me, that it came out that she was even making comments and things like, I'm going to be Greg's agent. I'm going to take care of him, be his manager.
Yeah,
and do things like that. Because even
creepy.
his girl, how do you say her name, T? Gabri? I don't want to keep messing it up. But I don't. Gabri. Even Gabri made the comments, And you know what? I want to say props to Gabri too, man. Because you know what? How many girls would have stood by that guy?
Holy crap. Honestly, that's a good woman. That is
I'm just saying that. I am just saying that, right? Because, right, how many girls do you know would have stood by you once you got convicted?
No one. Maybe for a month or two and then say, you know what, this isn't for me.
Right. I can really see, if you're with somebody and you love them, sure, you're going to be with them up until that point going through the trial. But if they get convicted, what are you thinking? You can't. What is your thought? she had so much faith and belief in what he was saying, and she knew him so well. She had so much trust that she knew he couldn't do it. It didn't matter what he was saying. And that's what it was, T. And so were all those people around him.
Right.
And that's what kept him going. His faith was so strong because of all that faith that was given thrust onto him from all those people that were supporting him, that knew this guy could not do that. Right?
Yeah. She said she knew his heart. And
it was just, it was pathetic the way this went down. It was almost like this Williamson County, like we talked about, they were known for just almost like in our area, we had that one city where it was just, I'm not going to mention Whittier, but the Whittier PD, and nobody went in there and you couldn't do shit. The police almost harassed you if you were outsiders, stay away.
Oh,
tickets everywhere, pulling you out of your car, humiliating you, keeping you away from there.
It was horrible.
I think that's sort of the tactics they did in Williamson County. And their arrest to conviction ratio was tremendous. And the DA's name was Janet Duty. And she had a big part in all this shit. And police chief Mannix and all these people played a big part in what was going on in this case. And these guys really had a lot of personal interest, I guess is the right term, right, T?
They did. A lot of self-serving interest, I would say.
I mean, and it's just pathetic that they would do that for a kid just because maybe that was their trophy prize, and I'm just going to refer to it. I know it's not the same, but almost like when Mike Tyson got convicted, the guy, the DA in Indiana, he made a comment or something. This is going to be the jewel in my crown or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In his career. And maybe this was Janet Duty's, right? I mean, at that point to maybe elevate her or something. I don't know what her thought was. But damn, dude, you can't kill a guy's fucking life like that.
Well, okay,
I mean, fuck.
So think of it this way. It's a small little Midwest town, right? And you're the head prosecutor, the DA, as a matter of fact, and all of a sudden you're faced with something that is bigger than everything that you can imagine for your little town, right? So to her, she's just seeing stars, right? She's completely just tunnel vision. I got to get this guy. I got to nail this kid, because this is the biggest thing that's going to happen for this little town, for my career, so it could springboard my career into something else. Right? Don't you think?
There was also an influencer too, T, and I want to just bring this in when you're talking about this, so it ties into it perfect. But you remember there was a child psychologist or somebody they were talking to, and at that time in law enforcement, there was a lot of molestation cases going on. Remember the Martin trial? There was a lot of big, high-profile molestation cases going on.
That was during the 80s and 90s. And there was
that set the precedence for what happened, because there was zero tolerance even up to the point when this happened. Correct. It was basically, if the child said it and they can, prove certain things and identifications, it was it. That's all they needed. And the jury would convict them. So, I mean, it was sort of like this rolling ball that kept rolling. And this guy sort of got caught up in that with this, I think, this old mentality of this DA. Because, right, she even got popped and got suspended for that Christmas video or something. You remember that part?
Yes. Yes. So she got popped for putting out, her and her husband recorded and produced it. And it was really cheesy, but I mean, consider the time too. What they did was, it was kind of like a hype video, and it was only intended to be for her team for their internal Christmas party. But essentially it was just about a bunch of propaganda and making fun of people that they've convicted, or any kind of social justice type of people. I mean, it was really some really bad, what they called jokes. And it wasn't funny at all. And as a matter of fact, there was a lot of people that were so offended by it that they took it upon themselves at the risk to their own career to be able to get a copy of that damn thing so that they can expose her later down the line. But we'll get to that when we can. I don't know about you, King, but I want to kind of talk about the next steps in what happened to him after the accusations.
Go for it, man. Just get into it, bro. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
All right. So the accusations happened in 2013, right? Now, that's when he was first arrested, was back in 2013. Then, not long after he got arrested, he was accused. Their second accuser came forward, and there was a second claim against him. Now, once the second claim came against him, that's when everything started to go crazy. More and more people were thinking, okay, this kid is guilty. There's no way. There's a second accuser. Fast forward to 2014, trial begins. Now, he's already arrested. He's been locked up, and now his trial is going to begin. Now, when his trial begins, mind you, King, the trial begins with absolutely zero evidence. There is no evidence, physical evidence at all. Everything is hearsay and accusations and the word of two children. So they being the DA, brought the case forward, and somehow it went forward. And I think it went forward only because of the mere fact of it's children. So they took this and they said, yeah, we're going to be able to convict based off of that. Now that's when the victims start to testify. Both victims start to testify, but one victim, while on the stand, decides to recant. So one of the children said, no, that didn't happen. And that happened to be the second victim that had came forward. Now, once that happened, all of a sudden the trial started getting shaky. That's when they brought in the daycare owner to testify. And the daycare owner started talking about, he's innocent, he's great, and just trying to play him up. Now, King, his attorney, Patricia Cummings, was hired based off of the recommendation of Sharma. Remember, you mentioned Sharma before. She was the booster that he lived with. She said, don't worry, I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to call Patricia. She's going to handle this and she'll take care of you. Now, his legal counsel was the one that was fighting for him, but she was a friend of Sharma. Now, fast forward 2 weeks after the trial began. That's all it took was 2 weeks, and he was found guilty. King, tell me, do you think that was a fair trial going forward with no evidence, and one of the people that was your accusers actually ended up recanting during the trial? How would you feel? Do you feel like you would get a fair trial if that, if you were actually found guilty?
Well, I think the first thing, right, is you look at is go back to like the things you talked about, and his lawyer and what she did. Even before that, what kind of case did she build? But then you look at the other side of it, right? And even if you're an attorney like her who basically built nothing, what did the DA build? They didn't build shit. They basically, and look, T, I'm going to be honest, right? I mean, so these kids, they don't have to go to the police station. They don't have to get interviewed at their home by a police officer with a gun. They go to this thing called the CAC, the Child Advocate Center.
Correct.
And they get interviewed in a nice room, where there's toys and they're comfortable and they're on a chair and there's usually a woman in there, a psychiatrist or a child psychologist, whatever it is.
Yep.
And they're filming it as an interview. And she's asking these questions just in a regular conversation. And that they have to say the truth, and they know that, but they're comfortable. They don't want to hurt the kids and scar them and make this more trauma for them, and that's the whole purpose of it. So these little kids who get these things happen to them, these horrible things, but they don't even want them to go into the courtroom. They do it video conference style, same kind of situation. You know what
Correct.
I mean? And when that first child basically said, no, he didn't do anything, that's got to be some red flags right there for jurors.
I would think.
And you know what? As a lawyer too, I'm going to pick up on that momentum and I'm going to dig into that and I'm going to say something. And you know what? The next day after they do that, I'm going to have some more meat to throw at this judge and this jury and everything else about what they're doing. And how did they come up with that kid? Because it's like you said, the second accuser came out. He never accused him. He directly called this guy. The detective Daly directly called him. And what happened, T, is when he got arrested for this, it was huge. The community support for Greg was tremendous. So the DA and Daly and all these fuckers over there knew, hey, we got to do something to change this. So they went in the media and had press conferences because they said the media wanted, there was too much media involvement. We had to have a press conference. We couldn't just keep doing regular interviews.
Right.
So they did that and basically put out a tip line. If anybody else feels, that they were in this facility or they had anything to do with this man, please call us. Well, days went by and nothing happened. And on the 4th or 5th day of no calls, this detective called the house of someone whose child went to that facility. That was a second accuser.
Right. They cold called him.
They cold called him and basically, like you said, influenced this small child. And this Daly was such a dick, dude. Just for personal gain. He fucking went into the room with the kid, with his gun showing, scared the shit out of that kid. Just basically say, yeah, he did it.
A 4-year-old child.
Because he didn't take no for an answer. Right. When the kid would say no, he would just put it another way.
He would reframe the question, but asking the same thing.
Oh, what is that about? And you know what? That lawyer had access to those tapes as well.
She did, and she did nothing.
And how do you not bring that up?
Now her whole defense was he didn't do it.
He didn't do it. He's just going to be found. No, they don't have a big enough case. No jury can convict him.
Which, to be fair to her, because there was no physical evidence, and you already had a child who had recanted, you kind of, what else are you going to say? As an attorney, that should be your defense is, it wasn't him. He didn't do this. But I feel, and correct me, tell me what you think, okay? I want to know what you feel about this, but I feel that she didn't go far enough. Like you were saying, I would have kind of jumped all over that. That would have been the hill that I stood on, right? And say, wait a minute. Now there's no credibility to this investigation because you already have a child that completely recanted his statement. There goes your second accuser. But the way that the prosecution saw it is we don't need that second accuser anymore. He's already here in court. We got him here. We got what we wanted and we're still going to push forward and we know we could prosecute still. Right? Now, here's the other thing, King. There are kind of rumblings and things behind the scenes and a juror came out and kind of confirmed it that they were kind of getting bullied while they were deliberating. Now, an innocent or guilty man's life is hanging on the balance, right? And his whole entire future is ahead of him. And you got people coming into that jury room saying,
before you go there, man, we got so much to talk about before you get into that, because I want to talk about that too.
Okay.
But right, think about this. Before you get into what the fuck the jury did, go back to the trial. This lady had so much other information, T. Okay, you made a comment. Who referred her?
Shawarma.
Sharma's son played football with Greg Kelley.
Correct.
These guys were best friends. When you hang out in high school, you know it too, especially the way there's certain looks and certain haircuts. These kids looked pretty fucking close to each other.
Brothers.
There are so many pictures where these guys they're just picture to picture, side by side. And if you look at it quick, you can't tell the difference.
You cannot.
Some of them you can, but it's not easy.
No, you're right.
Right? So the other part is there was no physical identification made, which she never brought up. There was no interview done with anybody in the household. There was no physically looking at anything in the house. She never brought these points up.
Yeah, the detectives never visited the actual house.
Because why? She knew that this Jonathan McCarty could potentially be the guy. So because of her interest with Sharma, I'm not going to do that to him. Now, and basically, even going into that, she represented McCarty in a fucking thing where he exposed himself to a minor a couple years before.
Correct.
But he was a minor. But she still had to represent him.
She also
she knew of this guy.
She also represented other people in the family. This kid, Jonathan.
But here's the other fucking
brothers.
kicker that this lawyer knew. She had access to the report, to the, what do they call it? The, where all the audio on a video is written down, is typed out, so they can read the transcript of the interview of the child who accused Greg at first and then said, no, it was Jonathan. But the detective asked him about Jonathan. Was that Jonathan who did that or Greg? And he said, Jonathan.
Correct.
And then the detective never mentioned his name again.
Tunnel vision.
And that was in the transcript. That lady knew that. She knew that guy's background, T. How do you let a guy like Greg Kelley, who's got everything going for him, is that jealousy? Is that what is that? It can't just be conflict of interest there. It's like, you know what? I mean, right? It can't be. I mean, she has to have ethics.
You would think.
And I knew it ate at her at the end, and we'll get into that when we talk about the writ and things like that. But what the fuck is that, dude? I mean, how do you explain that if you're an attorney that you didn't bring up any of those points I mentioned? Whether you say how solid or non-solid the case is, you want to build your case, right?
Absolutely.
And those are easy pickings. That's low-hanging fruit, man. I'm not even a fucking attorney. I've been in a lot of courts, T. I've been in a lot of courts, but I'm just saying I'm not an attorney.
Really? Have you now?
But I'm part attorney, I'm part doctor, I'm part everything, dude. So yeah, you know what I mean? I'm the savant, dog. Remember we talked about this a couple episodes ago. Right?
But
what was that movie with DiCaprio? Wait, Catch Me If You Can?
Catch Me If You Can.
Where he was a pilot, he was a doctor, he was a lawyer, and he did it by basically watching TV.
Right.
And what they all said.
Confidence.
So he got away with it. I could do that. I'm a savant, dog. But my point is, why wouldn't you bring that up, man? Now, why do you think? Do you think it was just conflict of interest, or was there something else for that Cummings lady? I mean, you have to bring all those points up so the jury can at least see that, right? And hear that out of somebody's mouth. She never did that, T.
Nothing. She kept silent on that entire.
She never did that shit. Never. And she basically took away everything from this guy.
It almost.
I feel so bad for this guy, Greg Kelley. T.
It almost felt like she didn't even care to fight that hard for him. When you watch the documentary and they show in the courtroom, they show some of this stuff. It just didn't seem like her arguments were that sound. It didn't seem like, you can see attorneys that are really fighting for their client. And it just didn't seem like she was fighting all that hard for him. There was very weak kind of, I guess, arguments back and forth. I mean, just completely weak. And it makes you wonder exactly what was going through her head when she took this case and said, well, I don't know. I think we got our she said she thought he was innocent, but then she also had her times where she had doubts of his innocence. I don't know if you remember that either.
Yeah, but I mean, based on what? Based on a child's interview? Okay, right. But
based on the fact that Greg was quiet. He was kind of a shy kid too. He was quiet, very respectful, and he just was listening to whatever the adults tell him, right?
Gee, what did you say in the beginning, man? His head was spinning. He's a kid.
Exactly.
Imagine that. Somebody's asking you a question and you're just fucking putting your hands over your eyes like, what the fuck is going on?
Exactly.
Why am I sitting here answering this question?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, imagine the look on his face. This poor guy. I mean, that's the thing we got to focus on too, right? What was he going through this whole time, T? What was going through his mind? What was his body going through? I mean, if this guy wasn't such a physical specimen, he probably could have had a heart attack or something from the stress.
Well, the stress alone has got to be just debilitating,
I mean, he was probably exhausted, completely 100% exhausted. You know, I mean, oh man, and when did that relief come to him? You know what I mean? I mean, that's the whole point too, man, that they did this knowing this and how long it would take, and they didn't care.
No.
They didn't care this was going to wipe out fucking years off his life. They did this so they could get their career elevated somehow, some way.
Yeah.
So that their resume looks better.
Absolutely.
You are kidding me. You are fucking kidding me, man.
So
I mean, that's a thing to me too. And so what did his lawyer have to gain? There was something there, you know. That's the thing. I mean,
the only thing I can think of is maybe some monetary gain on the back end from Sharma. You know what I mean? Like, hey,
keep my son's name. Like,
yes.
You think that she broke ethics and she broke the trial and she went behind the scenes and told Sharma, hey, look, your son's name, Jonathan, came out on this interview.
Yeah, I do.
Look, if you don't say anything, I'll kick you down, whatever. You think that would really happen?
I kind of do, only because Sharma has given, as I alluded to earlier, she's already given her a lot of business because her other two sons had a lot of problems too with the law. And this lawyer, Patricia Cummings, bailed her out with those two and got them off on other charges. Very similar charges, as a matter of fact. Then you figure, okay, they're in a well-to-do neighborhood. That neighborhood is not one of those, you know, it's not a ghetto neighborhood. Very well-to-do. They had money. Yeah, I think she would kick him down. Yeah, I definitely do. I'll take care of you on the back end. Don't worry about it. Just keep my son's name out of this.
I guess she was making money at the daycare. I guess the daycare was making money. So,
and her husband.
You know, but that's a shame, dude.
Oh,
that is such a shame that they would do that, man. I mean, you know, just talking about this lawyer Cummings, right? And I want to continue on this, T, is, I mean, yeah, not just talking about this personal gain for her too, but look at the things she didn't do in the trial that would have been so easy. Put this guy Daly on the stand, the detective, and just ask him, hey, look, did you have my client identified by the accuser physically? Yes or no? No.
No.
Did you ever visit the house, the crime scene, physically? No. Did you ever interview anybody else at the crime scene? No. Was there anybody else mentioned by these children at any point of these interviews? He would have to say Jonathan McCarty. Yes. Who was it? Jonathan McCarty. Did you investigate Jonathan McCarty? No. Why? Because we felt that whatever, Greg Kelley was the guy.
Right.
At that point, that puts doubt into jurors.
But that just made my point. The way you outlined that was perfect. That just made my point. She was protecting him because I think that there was something on the back
there was something there. Whatever it was. But just look at all the things she didn't do. And here's the other sad thing too, T, right? As a family member, and I'm going to say this, right? You have a voice to these lawyers. And I'm not, it's not bad mouthing the family, but someone in that family, one of those brothers had to step up and say, hey, lady, you got to fucking do better. This isn't good enough. Somebody had to say something and they didn't. And I don't know if it was out of fear or out of just not understanding what they can do to a lawyer. They're paying for a service.
I think to your point, I think it's more of they don't understand the law. So they don't really grasp what they're seeing. So they don't know if she's doing a good job or a bad job. They don't know that. They don't understand that, just like Greg didn't, right? Think about this, right? If you do nothing about the law, even though you've been in a courtroom about a gajillion times, if you knew nothing about the law, would you know to question a lawyer on any of that stuff that you were seeing? You may feel, something's not right, but you know what? I'm going to go with it because they know what they're doing.
But here's the thing, right? And this was the kicker. And this was the thing that's so sad, T, is because of this guy, Greg's naiveness and it just his trusting nature. He kept saying that throughout that first part of the documentary. He kept telling the lawyer, I trust you.
Yeah.
I trust you. And he trusted her with his life, man. And even if you're protecting somebody and you got a child, basically this guy was a child with his whole life, a better life than you probably going to have in front of you. How could you just allow that to be taken away for whatever reason? That's a monster. That's not a person. And you know what, man? I feel I've never felt so strong for someone who just believed in their innocence. I know there's that all over. There's tons of people who are convicted and overturned, and we'll get into that. But for a kid to do that like he did, and just believe in himself and his faith, and not give up, and family members and people just trying to help him. And we'll get into that too after we get into all the things that happened. But how does that person, knowing this guy and knowing this his good heart, sit there? And I believe when she made that comment, she didn't really trust him 100%. That's just to cover her ass.
I think so.
This was a good kid, man. You could tell. The way he sat, the way he was just humble.
But he
was a humble kid too.
To kind of finish the line that you were going down, right? The road that you were about to say is, how do you fucking sleep with yourself at night? How do you go home and
how do you look in the fucking mirror?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And no, you know what? I just fucking derailed a kid for the rest of his life.
A good fucking kid.
Because I couldn't do what I was sworn to do.
Yeah, you took an oath.
That's pathetic, man.
Now here's the other.
That's pathetic.
Here's another thing, right? So not only did she have all that evidence and did nothing, not only did she not question Daly on the stand exactly how you laid out as far as questioning, which would have trapped him perfectly, but she also hired a private detective that helped her. And that private detective went and he knew that Daly didn't do any of those things. He's an ex-cop. He went down the exact path that you were just going down. He went down that path and he's like, oh, damn, all these things are problematic. Then he starts interviewing people. And everybody started saying, hey, him and Jonathan look a lot alike. Every single person he interviewed said that. He even had photos of them two next to each other. And he said, if I didn't know that they were, two different people from two different, families, I would think that they were the same person. He said, so if I have a hard time noticing that, a 4-year-old child, I'm sure, can get confused like that as well.
And you don't think this guy Jonathan knew that? And the other part was this guy Jonathan was jealous of this guy Greg. This guy Greg was at all points, because what had happened, it turned when he moved in there because his mom was just paying too much attention to Greg.
Right.
And he's like, hey man, I'm your son.
Well, that's why I said,
you know what I mean? He was and he liked Greg's girl.
Gabriel.
So so you know what, man? This guy was just it was, and he was a kid.
Yeah,
that shit happens.
He wanted Greg's life. That's what.
But you're going to tell me that's not possible for him to think, hey, you know what? I'm going to go do this to this kid, and whatever, and then whatever. Hey, remember my name's Greg.
Could be, yeah. He could have planted the name in the kid's head.
Yeah,
absolutely. But see, when the private detective told Cummings about that, she waved it off. She's like, no, that's nothing. She didn't want to go down that road. This was her. The reason why he got found guilty was because of her. She was a shitty lawyer.
I mean, she was a shitty lawyer, dude. She was a shitty lawyer. I would be pissed off if she was one of my lawyers.
Oh,
I got a good lawyer right now. I'm happy with my lawyer, but I'm just saying, she's a shitty ass lawyer, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, at that point, man, it's like, fuck. I mean, it's like we said, look at the DA. Their biggest witness was a guy who owned a gym who came in to bash Greg Kelley's credibility and said that Greg Kelley lied to him and told him he was a Marine. And how could anybody do that and talk bad about our country? That was their big ace in the hole, bro.
Right.
That was their ticket. And you're going to tell me you can get a conviction from that, from the jury?
That was it.
Now get into the jury, T, and talk about what they're going to say. What happened to that jury box, dude?
So
what happened in that jury room?
Yeah, that jury room was tampered with. Not only were they tampered with in the fact that they weren't given the whole story because of a shitty attorney not fighting for their client, but they were also tampered by the DA's office. Now, we haven't talked that much about the DA, but this DA's office is fucking corrupt as they come. So the assistant DAs have the bailiffs going in. You know, they're tampering with the bailiffs all the way around, and the bailiffs are telling them, hey, how far off are you guys? They're getting a temperature check of the jury, which, you know, bailiffs do that all the time. But I really feel that the DAs got to them in this case because the bailiffs started to tamper with the jury and said, well, you know, you guys are going to have to stay if you can't come to a verdict. And so next thing you know, it was half and half for conviction, half for setting them free. And next thing you know, they start chipping away because people don't, I mean, come on, King, you've been on a jury, right? You don't want you don't want to be sequestered. You don't want to have to stay for.
Well, I think the thing too, right? You got to remember this is a criminal trial. It has to be unanimous.
Right.
It has to be 12-0. 12-0.
And it was 6-6. And then it starts getting chipped away because because the bailiff keeps telling them you're going to be sequestered. And all of a sudden, nobody wants to stay.
Well, they basically gave them a deadline. Look, if you guys don't come up with it by this time, you're going to have to call your family and have them bring you clothes, and you're going to be sequestered. So it's going to be a 2 or 3 day ordeal.
Right.
And they're planting all these seeds in their head to make it the worst possible scenario. So you won't be able to see your family. You won't be able to talk to them. We'll go out to the cars and get the stuff for you.
Yeah.
You can't talk to anybody.
Correct.
You can't have your cell phones on you. You can't have anything. You're just painting this picture.
Right.
That's just horrible for them.
So
fuck yeah.
Yeah. Everything starts to change now. Right. And so now it's 11-1, one fucking holdout. And that one holdout, they interviewed him. Now he didn't want his face on camera, but he said to them, he said on camera, I regret changing my vote. I regretted it from the minute I did it. And he said, because even to this day, I believe in his innocence. But he did it because all the pressure. He succumbed to the pressure of everybody else. Those fucking jurors didn't give 2 shits about that kid. What they cared about is, hey, can I go home and get dinner? That's all they fucking cared about. And as a citizen, think about it. Put yourself in that kid's shoes. Wouldn't you want your jury to fucking want to believe in your innocence? Or if you're of your guilt, but not just because they want to fucking go home because a bailiff keeps putting it in their head that, hey, you're going to have to be sequestered. That's some fucked up shit right there.
You know, it's tough, T, and I understand it, right? I understand the jury's there. I understand. But remember what we just said about Williamson County and the people that live there, right? It's a different thinking, right? So you got that part, right? The other part was there was a strong accusation made by a child, right? Do you remember what the accusation was?
No, refresh my memory.
He basically said, and he said, Greg put his pee-pee in my mouth.
Right.
And the child, that happened to the child, whether it was Greg Kelley, someone else named Greg, somebody he thought who was named Greg, somebody he mistook for Greg. We don't know because they didn't do an investigation. The point was in that county, remember, it was a very conservative county. We just said that. They cleaned up that county because it was like a high-end area.
Right.
Right? You talked about that lady Sharma lived in a higher-end area. Right? It was a nicer area. It was cleaned up. There wasn't any crime. We talked about that. So those people and their thoughts were different too. If that accusation was made by a child, somebody did it. But there's no way the kid knew his first and last name. The parents gave the last name somehow, some way. Right?
Right.
So when the kid probably said Greg, and they came, well, who's Greg? Well, Greg Kelley, the football player, lives there. That's him. Right? And that's when they called the police. They never did anything else about that. So these jurors in their minds, right? I think it's easy for the 6 or even 7 or 8 of them to think, well, you know what? If the kid said something, it happened. And it's pretty coincidental that this guy Greg lived there. But the other parts that they didn't even talk about, he wasn't even living there.
Well,
at the
not
time
anymore.
when it happened.
At the time that it happened, you're right. During that timeline.
And then the other part is that, and it's just one of those crazy rules, the DA and the prosecution can move the date of the offense to make it closer after their investigation. And they pick some date 2 or 3 months prior out of the blue because they knew Greg Kelley wasn't even living there, bro. But they didn't give any of that information to the fucking jury.
No.
And why didn't his lawyers say that again, like we said? So these jurors only got these little bits and pieces. So if they heard all the media stuff, which they heard in the beginning, because this thing didn't happen the next day after he was arrested. They weren't, put in a jury box and sequestered. They can't hear any media. This happened a couple weeks after he was arrested. He was out on bail for a while, a couple months, right? A month at least. So they knew shit was going on. It's a smaller community, like you said. So what was their influence already? It couldn't have been non-biased there in that county.
No, they should.
So I think he was.
That kind of
he
goes
was
back.
Probably pretty close to being guilty before he was even tried.
Possibly, but
so like you said, it was 6 to start, but there was probably 2 or 3 that were really close anyway.
They were on the fence. Well, they were probably the ones that kind of flipped easy to begin with. But
exactly, they're like, you know what, man, I'm not going to fuck with this. I'm not going to mess up my life for this guy fucking up. You know what? I'm going guilty.
That's just it, though, right? You just brought up something that just popped in my head, just by what you just said. How fucking inept is that attorney? Why didn't she move to have the trial have a change of venue? Because
I think because she would have to prove a lot of things, and it's money. You have to have a lawyer that really. I mean, you're gonna have to pay the lawyer a lot of money.
I don't know, man, but I mean, think about that. Fucking change of venue because he couldn't get a fair trial. Because you're right.
But you can't call him out because there's no precedence. You understand? You can't do a change of venue because he won't get a fair trial in that county because there's a culture in that county. You can't say that. There's counties that have worse cultures, right?
No. You wouldn't frame it with culture. I would frame it with because of the publicity of the trial and the notoriety, because he's a star football player and everybody in this county knows him, that he may not get a fair trial just based off of his local stardom, right? And then
I agree, but it's just like we said, look at how inept his lawyer was.
That's my point, right? I mean, think about that. You just brought up and I didn't even click with me before, but when you're saying that, fuck, a change of venue for this kid would have been perfect.
I mean, not just that, but just bring any of this fucking shit into the light.
Right.
Any of it.
Anything.
And you're going to put doubt into these jurors.
And that's all it takes is reasonable doubt.
Yes. And they couldn't even do that, man. That's the thing that's fucking bad, right?
A fucking travesty.
Yeah. So, at this point now, right, this is when the sentencing starts, right, for this kid.
Correct.
So now he's found guilty, and the minimum sentence for this shit is 25 years, day for day, plus you're a registered sex offender the rest of your life. Fuck, that's the minimum. The maximum is 99 years, day for day, no parole. And at that point, you're still registered sex offender, but does it matter? You're going to die in prison.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So there was an offer made, or his lawyers went to make an offer, whatever it was. They got in cahoots with the DA, and the DA said, okay, we'll give him 25 years, day for day. If he takes the deal now, we won't have to go to, to the sentencing hearing and all that shit. But he can't appeal. He loses his right to appeal. And basically, think about it though, T. He's already been found guilty. Right? It doesn't matter if she files to appeal right there. and then goes through the hearing and he gets sentenced. I mean, maybe she didn't feel she could appeal, I guess. But I don't understand why she didn't appeal, even try to make a deal where there was no appeal. And she sort of tried to fuck him, it seems, again right there. And they took that deal because it was the minimum sentence. And then you look at it in hindsight, right? And what they were putting out there is basically, look, we're getting the minimum sentence without having to deal with it, without a judge inflicting something else and making it 40 years or 50 years or 80 years. You know what I mean? So I could see how the family would look at it and say, okay, we'll accept it. We'll take it. But that's still, the lawyer still had to present it to them. You feel me?
Yeah.
So it's still on that lawyer again, dude. How do you do that to that kid? You accept a 25-year deal for this guy. Now he's incarcerated for 25 years with no appeal. So he's sitting there like, what the fuck? Now, I don't know if it was just guilt or what, but this Patricia Cummings, right, the lawyer, she gets in contact with this guy, Keith Hampton. And she gives him all her documents and says, you know what, there's a guy who's in jail, and there's a chance he didn't do it if you want to take a look at it, kind of shit. And this guy he's basically the god of overturning convictions, right?
I think
this guy's got so many people. Yeah, I mean, this guy he gets everybody out of fucking jail.
He's good.
I mean, because there's so many. Yeah, he finds things, and it's just like, it's obvious things, but people don't know how to take care of it, and their lawyers were that bad. So it was sort of astonishing to me that this lady even contacted this Keith Hampton. Well, he started looking into it and basically said, you know, with all this evidence, I got to go back to the DA, Janet Duty, and say, hey, look, you know, you guys missed some stuff here, right? I mean, let's just be honest. I'm not, you know, saying anything else or, you know, your credibility, but I just want to show you there's a lot of other stuff that wasn't brought out. And basically, he had a meeting with her, this Keith Hampton, and he showed Janet Duty, the DA, look, you know what? I got all this evidence, and he had a PowerPoint presentation, 30, 40 slides deep. And he said he shut her down by slide 9 and basically told her, you're wasting your time. We believe the children. And that's it. He couldn't get any further with Janet Duty. And fortunately for Greg Kelley, Janet Duty was such a douchebag that she got fucking kicked out of fucking office. There was someone who ran against her who was actually a really legitimate candidate, and the county voted him in. His name was Sean Dick. And this guy, Sean Dick, was a big part of Greg Kelley getting this thing overturned because he's legitimate. He was not in there for his personal gain. He was in there to do the right thing. And I'm just going to say Greg Kelley got lucky as fuck. He hit the lottery. Because if that guy would not have got voted in, if Janet Duty would have got voted again, there's a good chance he might have just been washed away in the back end of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 5-6 years later. Still in there. Right? But because this guy, Sean Dick, at least took that meeting with Keith Hampton 3 days after he was voted into office, and he saw all this evidence, he started an investigation with his assistant DAs. And they allowed this guy Hampton to have what's called a writ hearing, right? And this writ hearing is in front of a judge who basically is one of 10 judges or something like that who are going to vote on this thing to exonerate this man.
9 judges.
With the evidence. Nine other judges plus her.
Right.
And she's really conducting the trial. And it's basically weird sort of deal. It's sort of that the people that are representing Greg are working with the DA, and then they bring witnesses up to sort of kill their credibility and why they didn't investigate this thing the right way. And there were 3 key witnesses at this trial. And one of them was Cummings. One of them was a detective. And I believe one of them was the chief of police, Mannix.
Mannix, yeah.
And just the answers that these police chief and these guys gave, it was just horrific. You know, especially Daly, the detective. Asked him point blank, did you ever identify him? No. Did you ever do this? No. Did you ever do this? No. Why? Because we felt that this was the guy who did it based on the accusation. And even the DA were chewing these guys up. And they basically went to get this lady, Patricia Cummings, was going to get disbarred if she was going down this path. And she was sort of smart. She came lawyered up and basically flexed her attorney-client privilege, saying that she couldn't talk about certain things about Greg Kelley and what happened during the trial. So they honored that. But he did a little sideswipe and sort of attacked her as a conflict of interest with Sharma, like we talked about. And so did the DA. And the DA ripped her a new asshole. And basically, at that point, now the judge has all this information, and they use this information to try to go back with the other judges, and they see the video of and all the transcripts, and they go through it, and they got to make a determination if this guy's going to be guilty or not. So the writ hearing finished, and there was enough evidence in there for him to at least have a new trial or to have this evidence looked at to see if he would be exonerated or not. And he was allowed to be out on bail again. So he was freed from jail after 1,100 plus days, almost 4 years. This guy was in there, right? 1,200 or 1,300 days is 4 years. So this guy was just in jail under 4 years. And he got out, but he's still on bail. He can't do shit. He can't do anything until they exonerate him or find him guilty back in jail, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess it's like a certain day of the week, they post who's exonerated or whatever, and he would look at that thing every week to see if his name was on there, and was never on there, man.
Every Wednesday.
And every Wednesday, whatever it was. And this guy was just trying to keep going. And he got out of jail, and all his people were supporting him, and he was taking care of it, and his mom was loving it. He was happy again, but he lost 4 years of his life, the best 4 years. And, he had aspirations, and I think that's one of the things I want to talk about is when he had these aspirations and he got out of prison, he kept his motivation going even in prison. He would work out. He took care of himself in a tough environment where I don't know if you know about it, but when you're in big boy jail or even county jail, pedophiles, rapists, people like that, they get their fucking asses kicked every day, if not killed in there. And he was called out every day in there, and he kept his faith, man, and he kept his innocence. He could have just said, you know what, fuck it, I want to plead down and go to minimum security, whatever it was. You know what I mean? And he didn't do that. And that writ hearing and this Keith Hampton and all the things that they did for him, it just brought those things that we talked about during the trial that weren't talked about to light. And it brought also Jonathan McCarty out in the light and maybe focused him as a little bit of an investigation. In the 4 years that Greg Kelley was in prison, Jonathan McCarty raped a girl and got convicted of rape. And he got convicted of raping somebody, and basically he only got a couple years in jail and a few years as a registered sex offender. And Greg Kelley's offense was going to kill his whole career in his life. Supposed offense that he didn't do, that he got convicted of wrongfully. So that writ, just basically this guy, Keith Hampton, saved this guy's life. No one else was going to do that. There was a guy, Ian helped me with his name and talk about a little bit, but it was a guy who started the movement for him and really got a lot of big nationwide support for him. What was his name, man? I can't think of it.
Jake Braden. He was he owned a construction company. It was just some dude who had a friend that knew him and just kind of started saying, hey man, you got to follow this. You got to check this out. This is crazy. And he felt so just compelled that Kelley was innocent, and he just went full blown at this. I mean, luckily the guy owned a business and he had the money to be able to do it. But I mean, this was the early stages of social media. He started a Facebook page. He was live streaming. He was doing all kinds of rallies, support for Kelley. I mean, this guy is a kind of an unsung hero, right? Because let's face it, King, you get tried and convicted in the public court, right? In a court of public. And he had the public on Kelley's side the whole entire time. I mean, yeah, there was some outliers, but that group that felt that Kelley was guilty was relatively small compared to the big group and the movement that he started. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Maddox, the police chief. he came out and he did I guess an article for a magazine or for a local newspaper, and he called the supporters for Kelly a cult, that they were cultish, and he kind of laid out his argument for it, and that kind of bit him in the ass later down the line. But this guy really is the one that, from a court of public opinion, personally, I think was the man. If anything happened like that to me, I want a guy like that in my corner, because he rallied everybody around him. He was calling out the DAs, and rightfully so. I mean, he was attacking the DAs. He was calling out Patricia Cummings. He was calling out everybody that needed to be publicly called out. He was going after him. He went after the police chief. He was. Well,
he helped even Sean Dick. Remember, he helped Sean Dick because he was saying, "Hey, you got to get this lady out of office."
Right. He helped back Sean Dick.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like, this guy was big time when it comes out there. I mean, that's like a social justice warrior. That's the kind of guy that you want on your side, right? But I kind of wanted to kind of go back to a point that you were making earlier about Patricia. She showed up lawyered up, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, King, but I thought that part of it too was that she, before the hearings even started, the new hearing, she was supposed to be on giving a testimony that day, but the hearing was actually delayed because of her lawyer was in with the judge, and they said, because of attorney-client privileges, I'm not going to do this, because the Keith Hampton was going to use the approach of what do you call it when it was inadequate representation or something like that? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that was part of his writ. That was his whole thing, was saying that she was incompetent and she didn't defend him properly. And because she wanted to protect her fucking reputation, she lawyered up, and she comes in and she goes, "Oh, hell no. If you do that, all bets are off. The gloves are off, and I'm going to nail this kid. I'm going to say everything. Screw employee-client privileges. I'm just going to unleash on him. And that's going to be in the public." And so Keith's like, fuck, what can I do, right? And so then he decided, you know what? Cool. We won't take that route. I'll take that off of the writ. I'll take it off the table. But he was fucking smarter than her, way smarter than her. And he went that other route that you were talking about. He went a completely different route, and she never saw that coming. And even the DAs didn't know what was going on. And then when they caught on to what he was doing, what Keith was doing, they started hammering on her. And she at one point looked at the judge and was like, "Seriously? Like, can I don't want to answer that." And the judge is like, no, this is relevant, and I'm going to allow it. And she had to open up, and she had to say it. She had to tell some truth.
Well, he asked the question if she knew who Jonathan McCarty was.
Right.
And she said yes.
Right.
And she said, "Do you think that there's a resemblance between Jonathan McCarty and Greg Kelley?" She said, "I don't think I should be able to answer that."
Right. And that's how shitty of a person she is.
Now, just think about that. We've talked about how shitty this fucking broad is and whatever the fuck she is. Let's start talking about everybody else. This Janet Duty again. We talked about that video. We talked about all these things, but isn't karma a bitch, dude? I mean, right? When this thing fucking went down and she got out of office, she was all fucked up. She was just a mess. She committed suicide.
She ended up ultimately committing suicide. She became an alcoholic. I mean, it's really sad because she's a human being.
It's sad, but I guarantee you a lot of that guilt fucking played on her. Not just Greg Kelley, but all the bad shit she did.
Right.
The police chief Mannix. What about that guy? They're in cahoots.
Right.
They are directly in cahoots.
Absolutely. Man. Now, the other person that you may have forgotten to mention, and maybe I missed it, I don't know, King, but there was another law enforcement person that came into play during this hearing, this writ hearing. And
right, that was the third witness, was the Texas Ranger.
The Texas Ranger, right.
Talk about him and that fucking shady motherfucker. Talk about that dude. I was going to bring him up right now, but you talk about him. Go for it.
All right, so Sean Dick, who is the new DA, when he said, "Okay, listen, there is enough here for us to reopen this investigation and do it properly, and let's figure this out." He reached out to the Texas Rangers and said, "Listen, we need to have a non-bias, outsider to come in and do this investigation properly." and we only want to investigate this, and let's reopen it. Let's examine, was the investigation done properly? Was there enough evidence? Was there, but we need an independent law enforcement to come in. So they send in this Texas Ranger. He does his investigation, and then he goes on the stand. Keith brings him on the stand and starts asking him questions. Everything, King, everything is going in the way of Greg Kelley. Everything. And then he starts saying something weird. So he said he couldn't let Kelley off the hook because he has 3 suspects or possible suspects, and Kelley is one of them. He can't completely exonerate or take Kelley out of the mix. So and then when in the court, they asked him, well, who is it? And he said, well, 2 of them I could tell you because their names have been made public. And one of them, their name hasn't been made public. So I'm not going to mention their name because of the investigation. But he pretty much said Jonathan McCarthy and Greg Kelley. And he said those are 2 possible suspects right now. So it's just kind of odd that, he would be over there saying all these positive things about Greg Kelley and saying, okay, look, and agreeing with Keith Hampton. And then next thing you know, at the very end, he's like, yeah, but I can't rule out Greg Kelley and he's still a suspect. It just kind of sounds kind of odd to me. Don't you think, King?
I think not just that, dude, but remember when Greg Kelley got released from prison?
Yeah, I do.
That Texas Ranger was in the parking lot. Remember who was the guy, the advocate guy, I keep losing his name?
Braden or whatever.
Braden said, what the fuck is this guy doing here?
No, that was Keith, his attorney that saw him.
His attorney said that. Yeah, whatever. One of those guys saw him like, what the fuck's this guy doing here?
Right.
And basically after that happened, this guy came out and fucking pointed the finger again at Greg Kelley.
Publicly.
Which was sort of weird, dude. And said that Greg Kelley had pornographic tendencies and was on Adult Friend Finder and all this shit. And it was sort of fucking crazy how this guy turned and flipped the script.
Right.
I don't understand that one.
Well, wait a minute. Let's back it up a little bit. When they found in favor of Greg Kelley that day, or I don't even think it was even immediately that day. Was it that day at the end of the hearing? They found in his favor, the judge did. But anyway,
I believe so.
Yeah. Greg's mom was outside of the courtroom in the hallway.
High-fiving him, hugging him. Yeah, telling him, praising him.
And saying that
because
God.
Well, it's
God
like you said, dude. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, she kept telling him that God brought him in to their lives to help. Like she was okay. She was so happy and thankful to him, and that to me, that was just how. But he was setting her up. He was setting them all up because he kept saying, no matter what comes out, just remember, I only want the truth and justice, no matter what happens after this. So he knew right then, he already knew that he was going to fuck that kid over.
Well, he couldn't fuck him over because there was already too much other evidence.
But he was trying to.
That was the whole thing. Yeah, and that was what was so stupid. He fabricated stuff again that could be found out. Like, they don't think they're going to investigate these things. Remember, like we talked about, T, there's always cell phone records.
Right.
Your cell phone pings everywhere, even when you don't use it.
Correct.
They can GPS you wherever you go. They can look on the forensics on your phone. So they knew this guy, Greg Kelley, was nowhere near that place during that time, especially the day that of the accused. And that's a big point in a trial, dude. If there's an accusation and a date and a time made and you have a fucking alibi, that's why it's called an alibi.
Right.
Right? You're not considered a suspect at that point if your alibi is credible. But they never went through all that. And then that guy being so shady and all this, it just was so weird. Oh. And it was like all the cards were stacked against Greg Kelley, dude.
Okay.
Every turn he made, everything he did.
Now explain to me this though, King. Like, what did this guy have to gain? Like, we laid out what the potential for the DA and the assistant DAs and why they were pushing forward. We even talked about...
And the detective.
Yes, we talked about...
And the police chief and all these guys getting their accolades. Correct. Yeah, sure, I understand.
So what is in it for this guy?
I don't know, man. I never got it.
Again, could it be furthering his career too? Within the Texas Rangers? right?
Had to be at some point.
You know, you're in a high profile
But
case.
Well, you're already a whole high profile guy if you're in that high profile case.
Right. But now he could get elevated. He uses that as a springboard, like he was going to maybe up for a promotion or something. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah, who knows, dude? But fuck, dude, you can't be that blatant about it. That's, to me, the thing that got to me the most was the stupidity and how no one saw the stupidity. I'm not a genius, T. I'm not claiming I'm a genius. Sometimes I do claim it. But man, I would sit there and say, fuck, these fuckers are stupid, these cops.
Yeah,
I would be able to pick them apart in a court.
exactly.
And it was like, fuck, they just have like, I'm just going to use the term like bumpkin thinking. Nope, the kid said he did it. He did it. That's it. There's nothing else. What else you need?
Right.
What else you need? Look at this guy saying he said he was a Marine. How could he say that about his country? This guy's no good. Really? That's your whole thing? Your whole prosecution? That's your whole fucking evidence you got? Get the fuck out of here.
Hey, he's a bad guy.
Get the fuck out of there, dude.
Yeah.
And a jury to say, okay, yeah, man. There had to be enough of them that there was only a couple hanging fruit. And yeah, you're right. The one guy was trying to hold out. But fuck, man. Now, ridiculous, right?
Now, luckily for him, the judge saw through a lot of that bullshit. The new judge for the writ hearing. And thankfully he was able to get out on bond. But
well, no, yeah, he got out on bond again, you know. But remember, all that shit came out about him after he was out on bond.
Correct.
So it was almost like they wanted to screw his credibility again when they're trying to make a decision if he's credible.
Well, that's when they tried to bring him to get his bond revoked, and there was an attempt based off of that, but Sean Dick, the DA, went to the judge and said, "Listen, no, this doesn't change anything. You know, this isn't meaningful to us." But
yeah, it had nothing to do with what the accusation was.
Correct. And but Sean Dick was taking a leap of faith in a way, because he even said in the interview, he said it could have bit us. Because it could have meant something or it couldn't have. And we felt that it really didn't have any merit, but you never know. We believed in him. We believed that he was innocent enough to be able to just ignore it. But at the same time, it could have went the other way, right? And he would have been right back in jail. And that would have been fucked up beyond belief, based off of nothing, based off of a bunch of bullshit and lies. You know?
Okay, let me ask this question too, man. Keith Hampton.
Yeah.
He's the best out there. How did he get paid?
You know, I don't know how they get paid. It wasn't pro bono. I'm pretty sure it was not pro bono. I was wondering the same thing, because he's an appellate attorney.
Like he did a Patreon or something, or a GoFundMe or something.
Well, they didn't have that then. So I don't know if the family paid him or who was paying that. I'm sure that
they never said
that guy, Braden or Brondon or whatever, Jake Brondon.
He probably could have raised some money for him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was like a defense fund that he was raising.
You know, because that's a big point too. You know, and then you got to think too, man. At this point of his life, you know, and Greg Kelley is just his faith is so strong. And I want to go back to Greg and talk about him and what he does and what his faith was. And again, it hits home with me because he never gave up on his dream. You know, even when he was in prison, he knew, man, he wanted to play football. And he wanted to at least try to play for the University of Texas. And we just read a couple weeks ago or a week ago, he had a walk-on tryout for him. And I'm rooting for the guy, man. I mean, this guy's a stud. He fucking came out of prison after 4 years, not fucking working out like anything. And he fucking went to a workout camp where they work out NFL prospects and guys that are free agents. And he fucking hung with them. Lifting the weights they did, worked out with him, and was there the next day early before they opened. So this guy's a beast. He's an animal, and I want to see him succeed too. This guy's faith never wavered. You know, I think that's the tremendous story here, and I think that's the thing I want to always keep going back to. Is this guy's a model, dude, for everybody who knows, hey, look, I didn't fucking do it. I'm going to fucking keep saying I'm innocent because the right thing is going to happen. And he's the proof of that, dude. And this guy was just amazing, dude. Him and the support he got from his girl, Gabriel. I mean, that's tremendous, dude. Imagine that in prison. You have that support with you, knowing in your heart, I didn't do it. And you got somebody next to you who's just supporting you and believing you and trusting you. That's amazing, dude. I mean, that probably kept him going. That kept him going through that thing, right?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean,
So think of it this way.
even her family's the one that I think set the bail or got the bail for him.
They did.
You know what I mean? So they believe in him. They
The original
trust him.
bail.
They know he's not, and they're all rewarded because you know what? They did the right thing, and they just kept fucking trying to do the right thing for him, and they knew it would come out. And that's the best part of this whole thing, dude, that he did get out, but he was still on fucking bail for another 4 fucking years, dude. Another 1,100 days. Right? So he couldn't do nothing. He didn't know what he could do. He couldn't go into college because he could get arrested the next day. There could be a warrant for his arrest the next day. Right? So he couldn't do shit. And that was the fucking problem.
I think what he was doing at that time, I think he was he was working at a gym actually as like a personal trainer. And
Yeah.
his whole life was on hold until, this thing that's lingering was cleared up. Yeah, King. So I'm going to kind of frame this last part up so that we can kind of get a good glance of, we've already kind of walked through where he's been and everything. And up until this point, he has now been released, right? So we talked about the fact that he was released on bond, but now he's out on bond and his life is on hold, like we were talking about. What is he doing? He's doing odd jobs. He doesn't know what the hell he's going to do with his life. Every single Wednesday, this kid has been looking for a ruling from the appellate court and holding his breath. Every single Wednesday at 9:00 in the morning is when they release their hearings, right? And you don't even get to go before the appellate court. They just read your case, right? So those are those 9 judges that we talked about where they rule based off of everything that happened in the writ court. And you don't get to see anything. All you have to do is log into a website and just kind of read to see what happens to you, what their rulings were. Fast forward 2 more years. So now this is 6 years from the time that he was convicted to the time now that he's still waiting to find out what the hell's going on. 6 years later, he still doesn't know what's going on. Every single Wednesday, this shit is still happening to him. He can't move on with his life. Now he's got a fiance because he did propose to Gabriel. I think they were in Cancun, so he got permission to go out of the country. It wasn't a flight risk, so they said yes. And he proposed. She said yes, of course. She stood by him this whole entire time. That's a good woman. And then they come back and she gets a scholarship to go to a dance school in New York. So he gets permission from the courts so that he can move to New York and be with her. Now, what is his life over there? She's on a scholarship. She's in school all day. He's not doing anything. He doesn't have a job. He's not doing anything, at least in the documentary and everything I could read, that he really wasn't doing much. But every single Wednesday, like clockwork, he was on that website trying to find out what the appellate court ruling was and if there was a ruling. Next thing you know, at the end of the documentary or close to the end, finally there was a ruling. And the ruling came out that he was exonerated. The very first phone call he gets is from Keith right away. Happy as shit. They're congratulating each other. This kid has finally had his name cleared after 6 years. Just like you kept pointing out, King, he lost out on everything. He lost out on his scholarship and possibly, a bright future in the NFL. I'm with you when I say that I really want to watch him play in the NFL one day. Hopefully that does happen. Even college, shit, I'll become a Texan fan just if he's on the team, just to root for him, right? But one thing that kind of really bugs me that came out towards the end that I just can't get over this, King, and it just kind of pisses me the fuck off. Because here's this fucking bitch, Patricia Cummings, again. She's coming out of the woodwork, right? She's slithering like a fucking snake coming out to try to strike him down. Her and her attorney, the one that she walked into the writ hearing with, they went behind his back and they influenced somebody who had direct ties to the appellate court. And they went ahead and they were trying to influence the appellate court to strike down and rule against Greg. And that is some shady shit. Of course, they didn't have any evidence because there was no evidence other than it's like they just took whatever the DA's evidence was or the lack thereof, and they were trying to influence the court with that. Now, separate of that, all three of them, if you look at them in the public's eye, they're part of this Innocence Act. They go out there and grandstand and make all these speeches, and they're part of this attorney organization for the Innocence Act. They're fighting for people who are supposed to be innocent. She knew damn well that Greg Kelley is innocent. She even went up on a stage and gave a fucking symposium about what she learned from the biggest case she ever tried and lost, which was the Greg Kelley case. And she was trying to make it seem like she did everything in her power, and she did make some mistakes, but she learned from them. And yet secretly behind the scenes, she's trying to influence the appellate court to strike against Greg Kelley. Now that is some fucked up shit.
She got a big promotion too.
Yeah.
And into a position for the state of Illinois that's basically a person to make sure that people are rightfully prosecuted and rightfully convicted.
That's
not
bullshit.
Wrongfully convicted. Yeah, it is. But I'm going to say this too, T, and man, we covered a lot today, and the whole thing too is, you're right, man, and this guy basically, he just weathered through this thing and all these things he couldn't do and what he did, and I know we're both pulling for him, man, and support GK. This guy is just tremendous, and I think he's going to succeed in his life, and I truly believe that because the person that he is and what he's done so far, this was just a hiccup to him. So I think he's going to conquer other things as well. And I think, physically he's fine. He's going to be okay. He'll make the team in Texas. I think he's going to be that good. He's got to be good. So I think he's good enough to do that as a walk-on. He might be able to play in a year or two, get some exposure, and maybe play in the NFL. And I hope he does. And I'm rooting for him. But I think the thing also I want to talk about too, T, is all the karma that's hitting all these people.
Yeah.
All the karma that's going to come down on these people for what they did to this guy. And he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah, he's going to get compensation. And he has the right to get compensation. And I believe the minimum standard is $80,000 a year if you're incarcerated from the state of Texas. So.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I didn't know that, what the minimum was, but that's significant, but it's still, think about how much he's lost.
Correct. And that's the thing. And that I believe that he also now has a personal lawsuit against Mannix and against Daly. And both of those guys' careers since this thing has come out have taken a downward spiral and karma hit them.
Right.
And you know what, man? Karma deserves to hit them all. And Greg, don't worry, man. Karma is going to hit every person that tried to stand in front of you because for some reason you were touched by God, man. Because there's so many people that couldn't get out and they have that belief like you and they're still in there. And they're unfortunately going to spend their whole lives in there for things they didn't do. And something happened and you got a message in you that you got to put out there, something special about you. So, I think everyone needs to at least explore and look at this story a little bit. And if you can support them some way, somehow do it. But I think, T, that we talked a lot about, what was going on. And I think at the end of it all, I'm just going to say, look, man, I'm on this guy's side and I'm pulling for him. And for all the shit he had to go through and how he persevered that as a young man, that just is tremendous. And the way that he just came out of there better on the backside, a better person. He never wavered. He's still that humble person.
Strong, man.
And he did say that too, that I'd never felt hate before and I felt that and I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
But he's doing the right things. He's not lashing out. He's not doing things. He's a young man still. And he was in an environment that was a fucking jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out of that pretty much unscathed. I don't know really what happened in there, and nobody really will know except him. Maybe Gabriel as well.
Probably.
But you know what? I hope nothing seriously bad happened to him.
Yeah.
And I hope mentally he's going to be okay. And I know he's strong enough and his faith is strong enough that he will. But man, this is such a tremendous story. I want our listeners to fucking start looking at this guy.
They got to watch the series. They got to watch the series. Outcry.
Minimally watch the series. Google his name.
Yes.
Read about what's going on with him, what he's doing now, and the steps he's making now.
Yep.
Follow him. See what he's doing. Keep an eye on this guy because there's something special about him. That's the point, man. I mean, you did a great job, T, talking about all the details of what was going on. And I think, at the end of it, I'm going to say this. What would you do if that was your son or that was you when you were 17? Put yourself in that position, knowing 100%, maybe not that exact accusation, but in a situation of serious consequence where you knew 100% you were innocent. And me and you growing up, we didn't have the means to get any decent lawyer, to even probably get a lawyer.
Right. Public defender.
Yeah. So, man, we're at the mercy of the court. And yeah, you're right. It's so easy that these things could happen. Right? I mean, who are they going to believe?
Right.
You're going to believe a kid? I know these circumstances were different. This was a very good kid, a model student, a model athlete. And he was high profile. But I think all the other circumstances we talked about created that in that county, the DA, the culture in that county, the way the police activity is in that county, and what the community culture was. I think it all attributed to what happened to the poor guy.
Right.
And it's a tremendous story. It's a tremendous story of overcoming adversity and never wavering and keeping your faith and trusting in yourself. Right? He believed in himself the whole time. He knew he didn't do it. I didn't fucking do it. I'm not going to ever say I did something I didn't do. That is tremendous belief, right?
Oh, it is. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said, no matter what, this guy's going to succeed in life. He kind of has just that thing about him, right? I mean, you get that sense that whatever he decides to do in this world, he's going to accomplish, and he's going to be extremely successful at whatever he puts. He just kind of has that makeup. Some guys have that. Some people have that drive, and he's got it. And I think you kind of called it out perfectly. The other thing is you posed the question, how would you feel if you were that age, right? And that happened to you. I can't even fathom that happening to me. I don't know how I'd be able to even as an adult now, I can't even process how I would be that at that age. I could probably guarantee you that I wouldn't come out the same way that he did. I would probably be way jaded. I would be extremely just broken. I don't think I had that kind of toughness, that mental toughness that he had. I don't know if I could come out the same way he did, to be honest with you. I mean, that just speaks volumes for the type of person he is, right? And the hats off to his parents for raising such a fucking solid citizen and a great young man, right?
I mean, it's like I said, T, I same thing with me. And you know me, T, I thought I was a king when I was 17 years old, right?
Hence the name.
Put myself in that position. Man, I crumble. I crumble like a little kid.
Right.
I mean, same thing. I mean, I just, it's people need to really see what this guy's about and follow his story, folks, because it's like you said, somewhere, somehow down the line, this guy's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of it, and I want to be there to support him.
Yeah.
And like you said, I don't know about being a Texas fan. I'll be a Greg Kelley fan.
Well, yeah.
But I watch fucking games, you know what I mean? Games. So, but yeah, absolutely. And I'll follow this guy. And I'll be a fan of his, whatever he does. I don't care if he's on the punt team, on a fucking NFL team.
Yeah.
I'll fucking go watch him. I'll go try to get his autograph.
I'll rock a jersey.
Right. And those are the things you want to do. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think the only one thing that just kind of bothers me about this whole thing that lingers, I mean, it had a really good outcome, is the fact that his dad passed away a year before he was exonerated, and his dad died not knowing uh, the fact that his son was finally ultimately found not guilty. I know his dad felt and knew all along that he wasn't guilty, but just that, that fight to be able to say, you know what, he was truly found in the eyes of the law not guilty. I think that's the only thing that really kind of stuck with me, as far as just like, man, that one part just kind of sucked, right? That hurts. And I know it hurt for him, but he still got his mom, and his mom was with him every step of the way. His family is just, that's an amazing family, right? I mean, let's just call it what it is, King. I mean, that family is just amazing to be able to be that resilient. Because think about this, right? Think about what he was going through in jail, but think about what happens to the family outside, right? Like we talked about Gabriel on how strong she was for staying by him, but think about all how tough it is from the family standpoint to be able to endure all that too. And his mom went every single week to visit him during their visits, every single week, never missed a week. That's saying something. That's very difficult. So that's a strong mom. That's a hell of a woman right there. And if she's that strong, now I understand why he's the way he is. So that's just an amazing family all the way around.
I agree, man. And like I said, man, this is an amazing story. Minimum, guys, just Google his name, see what he's about, see what he's doing. I think, but for me, I think the last thing I just want to say, man, is I wish this guy the best in life, man. I wish everything for him, and I hope that he succeeds. I know he'll succeed.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm privileged to know that at least I can, with social media, with media the way it is, with the World Wide Web, that I'm going to be able to see him and see what he does and what he's doing, because I know he's going to be successful. So, hats off to you, Greg Kelley, man. I just want to say thank you for, letting me see that and letting me be inspired by what you did and what you went through. And I want our listeners to get a part of that. And I think that's why we put this show out today. Dean did a great job today, man. But, I think we've got a lot of stuff in there, man. And I think that, we really got to close it up. And, I think just, on my end, again, like I just want to say that I feel like I'm privileged to at least know this guy's life and what he's doing. And I really feel privileged to have something that I could look forward to in my life, to at least see somebody like this overcome what he did and to succeed. So I'm looking forward to that. And, success to you, Greg Kelley. And I know you're going to be a success, and I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing what you do in the future. So
I can't even, there's not much I can say beyond that, because you hit everything. That's exactly my sentiments. And hats off to this kid. His whole life is ahead of him. And, I know he's going to do well. I know he's going to be successful. He's the kind of person that I want my son to look at and say, wow, that guy's inspiring, and help motivate him too. It just all the way around. I don't care what your age is. I don't care, what social structure, anything. You got to be able to see this guy and you'll be inspired by him too. Just a great story to be able to persevere through. So I'm with you, King.
Again, we want to thank all our listeners. We know this isn't a regular show, but we felt that there was just enough out there that we had to make a show of it. And we want to make it a standalone show because we want to support Greg Kelley, and we're showing our support by doing that. There's nothing else that we talked about today. And that's our story, guys. That's our show, so we want to thank our listeners for listening to us. We really encourage you to hear about this guy, listen about him, read about him, whatever you can about him, and support him. His family is tremendous. The people that he's associated with are tremendous. And if there's ever anything that I can do as far as support or anything, any otherwise, I'm going to try to do it. So, I want to thank you, T, for putting it out there. And you reminded me and even, said some things today that I didn't know. So you've done a lot of good research too.
Thanks,
and I
King.
think we did a lot for our listeners today.
Absolutely.
And, just Greg Kelley, just, man, amazing.
Hey, King,
I can't say anything else. Yeah.
hey, do you think Dr. X can land an interview with this guy at one point?
Man, maybe. You know what I mean? If he can, that would be great. I'd love to. I want to really see what happens in the results of his walk-on tryout at Texas.
Yeah.
I know it's a crazy year with the COVID and everything that's going on, but I really want to see the results of that. So, I think right now, he's probably a little bit head spinning. I don't know. Maybe we could try to reach out to him somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Let Dr. X know. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're going to stop talking about him. I think there's going to be updates along the way.
Yeah.
This guy moved us, T. He moved us.
Big time. He moved the needle for us big time. We're doing a whole show on him. So that just goes to show that he really made an impression. So I don't know. Maybe we'll incentivize Dr. X to see if he can really push for it.
Whatever it is. And if we can land an interview for our listeners to hear this guy's story and hear it from the horse's mouth, because we probably fucked up a lot of the details because we're so excited, just want to get everything out.
Yeah, I know.
But our intention was good. Yeah. And if they can hear this guy coming, what he's doing, and just hear how his voice comes across and the message in his voice is tremendous. Yeah. And it's going to move them. So, yeah, let's try it, man. Let's at least give it a shot. You know what I mean? Or go down swinging, right?
Exactly. What harm can it do, right?
Hey, you know what, Greg Kelley, if you're ever listening and you can just go to, any one of the platforms and you Google your name to see who's talking about you in a podcast and you're listening, hit us up on www.thedoubleshow.com, bro. And we'll get back to you right away, man, for sure.
Get at us at thedoubleshow.com. That's the email address.
That's it, man. Hey, man, we're going to go ahead and get out of here again. Thanks to our listeners for sticking around. I want to say thanks to you. I want to say thanks to everybody who makes the show happen. Again, we're doing the best we can, folks, and we hope it moves the needle for you. We want to really hope this story moves the needle for you because it touched us both. So, that's all I got. T, go and close out your end.
Yeah, first, great show, King. You thank me, but you really did a lot on the back end to make this show happen. And thank you for that. This was your idea, and it was a great idea to be able to do this show. You're the one that showed me this documentary and said, listen, we gotta do something. We got to do a show on this. And that was a great call. So hats off to you, King. I'd like to, again, thank everybody for listening, everybody that makes everything possible for us. We are incredibly humbled by all of you. And truly just love you guys. Okay. So everybody stay safe, please. We don't even get into the regular show type stuff, but please just be smart and stay safe.
Absolutely, man. And, like you said, again, we want to thank those frontline workers, essential workers, and all those people. We never forget you. We wanted to keep this story a little bit different. Don't get away from those things and take you guys away from it for a little bit. So now that we're back in it, hey, it's us again. We just want to say thanks again for the Double I Show. I'm RW King.
And I'm Sweet Tea.
And we are
out. From the left coast where we take sound that combines sunshine with rhyme, move them around. Take it slow, watch the smoke we blow. Bring California swing and this thing for show. Well, hey there, baby, doll, dance the go-go. Off a little mentally, I see it in slow-mo. Hollywood, the east side, hub city, and Frisco. Guys with the flyers, fires up in the disco. Whoa, whoa, oh, now here we go. Mira, delincuentes, bum rush the show. Aquí in Cali, where trees so sweet, and these habits is feeling hairy on this work.